That's a nice title, isn't it? Reimagining the Ordinary. Yes, please.
Yeah.
So this is our kind of theme for this week's home retreat. On, you know, bits of it online, no doubt, but having a retreat at home.
Yeah, and I think it was Miller Upper inspired in terms of the very much the sort of like everyday things are your practice. So that was sort of where the reimagining the ordinary arose from.
Oh, I didn't know that. Very nice.
I was also just thinking about it in terms of, because of lockdown, it is more, well, for me anyway, there's more like, I'm just in more of a repetitive routine than ever. It's kind of like Groundhog Day every day. So yeah, having a bit of a challenge to reimagine the ordinary seems like really good timing as well.
Yeah, because there's a lot of ordinary about.
A lot of ordinary.
Yeah.
Ordinary in the kind of in weird, extraordinary COVID circumstances.
Yeah, I was going to challenge that actually.
Yeah.
I was going to challenge that because I looked up the definition of ordinary, and I felt really like, on the one hand I can see that everything we're doing is like we're kind of confined to the repetition that you mentioned in the mundane, but on the other hand nothing feels ordinary at the moment. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. It felt like actually things don't feel ordinary.
Yeah, that's a good point. And not so much, I guess, for the lockdown kind of element for me, but I was just thinking, as Cait was saying about routines, like, oh, I don't really have a routine. But then I just thought, actually, I do all these things that I don't want to do repeatedly every day, and like fitting in my meditation practice and yoga and things like that. The things which I want to be my routine, but I kind of really have to like squeeze in here or there rather than giving them the focus. And then just think about all of the things I do that, you know, spending too much time on the computer, etc. That sort of habit that's not welcome. I would like to reimagine that bit, I think.
I'm really interested in routine because I think I find it really supportive, but I also think that I sort of rebel against it. The idea of doing the same thing every day, I really want to push against it. But then in terms of setting up helpful practices, I think that repetition can be really good. So I'd be really interested to hear from all of you as well about what your relationship to that is.
It's interesting, isn't it? What goes through my mind is that when I'm at home, routine can feel yawn. When I'm on retreat, I mean, you don't get a much more, system, how to put it, the sort of the rhythm of the day is the same every day, isn't it? I love that. It takes the pressure off in a certain sort of a way. Okay, it means I know where I need to be at what time, and it gives a structure to the day. But I find that gives me space beyond just not having a job to do, or beyond free time. Something sort of rests, I find. Something kind of, oh yeah, I know where I am. And I suppose it's simple. I don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel every day, I don't have to be making it up a lot. If I can just relax into letting it be simple.
That was the word that was
really
coming up for me. As you were talking, I just thought, I guess it's that kind of, on retreat, it's the simple tasks, often not talking to anybody, and then you're not spending energy, anywhere near as much energy on doing them, because you don't have to think about it in that way, which means you have energy for other things. Whilst if there's less of a routine, or it can just be sort of like having to make decisions about what you're going to do next, is even energy being spent and time being spent.
Very, very true. So that's interesting, isn't it, from the point of view of, so here we are, if we're looking at this week home retreat, you know, I mean, are you all still working during that retreat? I mean, I won't be among you, I won't be able to join you, because actually I will be on retreat with Tiratnaloka, albeit by Zoom and at home, but that's why I wouldn't be able to be with you there. But are you going to be working during this week?
Yeah, I will.
So there's that trickiness, isn't there? That, so in a way, normal, ordinary routines will still be running in a way. Plus, we're trying to find some of that simplicity, some of that different sort of routine that Esme's just been talking about, aren't we?
I think that's something that I've thought about, is that when I see the retreat and when I see the week in my head, I think I really want to make the most of it, and I really want to see it as an opportunity. But what I don't want is to put too much pressure on myself and to feel like I'm not doing it well. So I feel like I really want to find ways that I can make it feel different, but without putting too much pressure on myself, and try and feel like it's fitting in with work, to feel like I'm getting that from it, and I'm really mindful of the fact that I'm on retreat, but without giving myself a hard time if I don't wake up at a little bit earlier to do a meditation. I don't know whether you've had any thoughts about what you're going to do differently to make it feel like it's a retreat.
Good one.
Being that it's at home.
Yeah, I think I really like the fact that it is all happening around work, because that is actually what our lives are like most of the time. And I think there's a bit of a sort of big division that happens, where it's like I go away on retreat and I'm kind of, I don't know, I experience these amazing mind states, and I'm really fired up, and then I come back and go back into my normal life, and it's so hard to sustain. Whereas this is like a chance to actually look at, almost like take a bit of an inventory of the setup of my normal situation. So I think from my point of view, what I've done before in urban retreats is I'm totally with you about not trying to not set up anything realistic, but it's kind of like starting with what my routine actually is, and then maybe just like tweaking a tiny bit, like just to add a little bit more intention, or a little bit more magic or something.
That's a nice phrase, isn't it? How do you add a little bit more magic? That's similar to what was in my mind, which was, you know, we can talk about the routine, the rhythm, you know, the different events that might happen in a day. And okay, on retreat, they're quite simple. There's not that many of them. They've all got the same focus. Whereas in the ordinary day, it's all much more broken up in a sense. But I was just thinking of, I mean, are all your jobs happening basically down the computer with screens? Right? So what just went through my mind was, well, if that's the case, then in a way where you're sitting right now for this conversation that we're having is a place that you inhabit again and again and again in the course of the week, isn't it? Because if you sit in front of your computer all day for your job, is there anything you can do to make that immediate environment a little bit more magical, to use Cait's phrase, or to just have a kind of almost like a frame around it, or a little something sitting in front of your screen, or wear a mala or a particular ring or a bracelet or something, where, because you're going to see your hands, aren't you? You know what I mean? I used to be a typesetter. I know what it's like sitting in front of a computer for hours at a time. But just something about literally your visual field. Can you bring something into your visual field that you find beautiful, that connects with something you aspire to, you know, something you might aspire to for this week, that can kind of remind you of it, just in those literally moment by moment, you know, any spare moment of the day, it can just kind of remind you, sort of a bit of a setting of intention. There's that, but even nicer than that, it just reminds you of something beautiful, you know, something that's beautiful about what you're wanting to do this week.
I think that's a good idea.
Does that work for anybody?
Yeah, I've got a sort of behind my laptop, I've got a sort of rack that I can pin things to.
Lovely.
Yeah, it'd be quite nice to, if I have set a particular intention, or if there's anything during the week that strikes me from any of the talks, could just put something up.
That's it. Pin it up, keep it live, keep it changing. What is it today? I don't know, or something. What always inspires me, and you know, whatever works for you, really. Either pinning it up or having it on the table there, or paint your fingernails your favorite color. I mean, I don't know. Do whatever will work to kind of keep a sense of interest and energy, but also that it's connecting you to what you want to practice this week. Okay, so it's in that way. Remember, didn't Sachi-Lila have a phrase about being on retreat in secret or something? So your same, you know, people that you work with down the screen, as far as they're concerned, it looks like the same old Monday when they look at you, you know, but actually you look at them, wah-ha! You have all sorts of things around them. They are framed, if you like. The rest of the world is framed in a way by your aspirations. They might not know it, but it'd be very interesting to see what effect that had on your contact with them. Do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking jungle. I mean, that's my
jungle. I'm liking it
all the way.
I'm liking it. Yeah.
And when you're talking about intention, I guess that's kind of, I mean, I haven't done an urban retreat before, but that's kind of what I was picturing as being the main thing that I want to change. So when I'm doing, like my day-to-day job that I'm not, you know, particularly interested in, it's sort of like how do I do it in a way that is more kind of intentional? Like, I'm here doing this thing, and then think about the positive benefits that other people get from it. And I was thinking, like, could I, like in one of my plants, just have something like a little flag that says, you know, a reminder on it or something, just to like, as often as possible, kind of switch my head into that kind of like, you know, actually pay attention to what you're doing and have a meaning behind it.
Or even intentional in the sense of that somewhere on there you've something that's going to remind you to relax, that's going to remind you to sit back in your chair, rather than this totally habitual kind of leaning forward into things all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I find with Zoom.
We do that with so we do that physically with a screen, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, I do. And I end up hitting the keyboard harder and harder. But actually, we do that with our minds. We do that with our, you know, we're either leaning back into the past, or we're kind of leaning forwards into the future. How do I just inhabit these sitting bones, making contact with this cushion as it happens, you know, this chair? How can I encourage myself to do that?
I've noticed that recently because the temperature has dropped, and I'll notice that I suddenly get really cold, and it's because I've been sat glued to my computer in the same position for hours without moving at all, and I've got really, really cold. I was thinking about, whilst you were talking, I was thinking about, although I will be working, but there's no one sort of forcing me to sit at the computer the whole time. So what I might actually do is go into my work calendar and block out little chunks of time every day, because the thing that I really want to get out of this retreat for me, and the thing I really want to practice, is meditation. I really want to get back into a regular practice, because I've lost my practice. It's very irregular, and I think with so many things that we know are good for us, it's not that we don't want to do them, it's just forgetting. I haven't made space in my routine. So I feel like if I block out sort of 15 minutes or half an hour in my work calendar, and then that appointment is made for me, I don't have to worry about that. Then it's there, and it will encourage me to get away from the computer and sit down away from it for a moment. And I'd be interested to see if that affects how I work. And whether my work
Absolutely.
yeah.
I like this because it's like Dharma for the reality of like working on a laptop all day, which is,
Absolutely.
you know, you hear stories about the Buddha or whatever, and it's just such a different context. And I mean, for so many people now, what we're doing is just sitting at a laptop all day, and it's like just interesting to think about how we can, how I can like improve that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit like, how can you how can we weave our practice into that, you know, or how can we apply what we want to the thing we're actually doing 8 hours a day, you know? And then it's such a very particular way down the screen these days, isn't it? You know, it's all sorts of other little interruptions or little bits and bobs that happen if you're sitting in an office, say. We're not getting the benefit of, you know, the chat at the kettle or whatever it might be that kind of opens out the day a little bit when we're working alongside other people. But anything else we can think of in relation to that? So there's literally the physical space around your computer. There's blocking out, you know, if you notice that you do end up sitting there, I mean, for hours is quite frightening, you know. Hours is too long, Hannah, you know. So, you know, ways to just break it up a little bit. Think about when you're on retreat, meditation practice, you know. Okay, it's not an ultimate law, but you know, 40, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, then you move things around, don't you? You get up, you walk, you come back, then you sit down again, you begin again. So this sort of attitude of here we are again, beginning again, rather than just I'm still slogging through. You know what I mean? Some attitude of sitting down freshly. So that's where getting up and going and putting the kettle on or whatever it is that just breaks it up a little bit. To me, it then feels like when I come back down, I sit down again, I begin again. You know, it's a kind of bit of a touchstone back to fresh. Let's do it fresh now this time. Is that impermanence, actually? It has moved on from how it was in the previous 10 minutes. These are a whole new, fresh 10 minutes, or whatever it is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I really like that because like, with my job, it's sort of I'm forced to multitask. And so I kind of wanted to start, you know, kind of trying to make it a little bit less multitasking. So, you know, really just focus on one thing for a bit. And that having it like a timer sort of thing could potentially be really helpful way to kind of just stay focused, hopefully on a small number of things.
Kind of make the time windows a size that work for you, because even if all you're doing is you're getting up and you're walking around the room before you're coming back to sit down again, you know, just it's something about making working at home work for you, rather than, you know, using the freedoms that you have got, using the initiative and the kind of choices that you can make to make it work better. Anyway, we're talking about work, aren't we? Anyway.
It's funny because it's talking about all those habits that are good for us in our working life, and it's almost like by calling it an urban retreat, we'll be giving ourselves permission to do those things where we wouldn't normally. So taking a break or doing a meditation, or like there's something as well you said about wearing something, and I know that there's been a lot in the news about working from home means that we wear our comfy clothes and you don't often put your face on in the morning and there's no pressure to, but actually, although there are benefits to that, it might be quite nice to think to, you know, I'm going to wear my urban retreat outfit for the week. I'm going to have a particular jumper or a particular ring or I don't know, just thinking about how can I, it might be nice just to make it a bit special. And what was that word you used, Cait? Magic, like bring a little bit of magic.
Magic.
Yeah.
And just because in a sense what you're bringing in is a bit of imagination.
Yeah.
You're bringing in a bit of beauty, a bit of something you like, something you love, something you're interested in or enjoy. That is good for you. whether it's mascara or, you know, a necklace or whatever it is, you know, in the context. Okay, we're not talking about just kind of dolling up for the sake of it, but, you know, because it's reminding you of something, of a quality you want to perfume your day with, a quality that you value and that you don't want to forget. That's why you're kind of doing it, because it's helpful.
I've thought of the perfect thing. I've got dangly parrot earrings that I bought for shopping for other people.
There you go.
Yeah, this is their time to shine.
Wow,
I think
actually,
this jungle theme is building.
Oh,
We've got
yeah,
parrots now.
because we're recording this in advance, we'll be able to see if you're wearing them.
Okay, right now.
Yeah.
Don't forget. We can remind one another. That's the other thing. That's the other thing about the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you know, kind of talking with somebody else about what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, you remember, but, you know, we can ask one another or remind one another or whatever it is.
I think at the moment for me, and it might change because we're recording this a few weeks before we start, but I think one of the things I want to focus on is sort of bringing my attention to what's actually pleasurable or enjoyable in my experience, or what sparks my imagination, or kind of what I'm grateful for, because I think I just enjoy complaining sometimes, and everything's feeling a bit grey today, and actually I really like that practice of putting attention onto what's good, and then it almost like builds a bit. But a bit like you were saying, Hannah, it's kind of remembering to do it. So I'm thinking, could I write some notes for myself or little reminders or something, so that I just stop sometimes in the day and do that.
Yeah. Notes. And that's, for me, that's where, you know, a kind of a physical object comes in. If I've got that physical object in front of me, particularly if it's colourful somehow, a colour that really, it kind of bypasses my brain and goes straight into my heart somehow. You know, a particular colour that I find beautiful or softens or something. So
I don't know.
That can remind you.
I don't know if we're going to suggest this on the urban retreat, but when I did my first urban retreat 5 years ago, one of the things they suggested is that we buddy up with someone, and the point of it was to email each other or text each other every day with, I think it was either 3 or 5 things that we were grateful for or thankful for. And I hadn't done that exercise before. I've done it loads and loads and loads since, but there's nothing, for me, social pressure works really well. And because I knew that the lady Maureen, who's a friend, would be expecting my email, I was like, right, I've got to sit down and write something. And some days it was like, I have nothing I can think of at all. So it gets really, really basic then. It's like, oh, the sun was shining. Phew. And maybe it is just a basic thing. But then other days I'd have loads, and you didn't have to stop at 5. You could write loads more if you wanted to. And that was a really lovely exercise. And it'd be nice to see what effect that has, practicing that over a whole week. So I'd be keen to buddy up with someone again on the retreat.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're meant to be, or that is an option for people to do. So
And that's interesting, isn't it? Didn't you say earlier on, Hannah, something about that you were talking about, I'm just playing with pressure now, you know, that whole thing you were talking about, in a sense, wanting to not feel that leaning into the computer, that sort of pressure that means you sit there for hours. But interesting, the sort of the kind of the kind of pressure to, it's a bit more like, I don't want to let her down by not keeping it going or something, isn't it? That's interesting. It'll be a bit different. Not the same kind of pressure, hopefully. You know, it's not the pressure to perform or anything like that. It's just, how do you keep a thread and keeping it going for one another? Because it's like really remembering you are a bit of someone else's practice. You know, we are conditions for one another. And sometimes we'll go out of our way for the other person, you know, we'll remember because there's another person involved in a way where we wouldn't prioritize remembering for ourselves. That's kind of a bit sad in one way, but also it's really important to clock it if that's the case, because that's really, well, that can help us, can't it? That can help us do what we want to do. If we kind of do it for the love of someone else, in a sense, or for caring about someone else, then that's all right reason to do it.
Yeah, that reminds me that sort of one of my, at the moment in my practice, sort of kindness is quite important. And also just sort of like seeing the world as alive. From a retreat I went on in March, that kind of really stuck with me, that sort of animistic way of looking at things. And just thinking, well, in a way, we're kind of a bit more limited on the kindness that we can show to people at the moment. Like the opportunities don't arise in the same way, just because, you know, just don't see anywhere near as many people or whatever. So part of what I wanted to do on the urban retreat was just sort of like, I hadn't figured out how yet, but sort of bring kindness in, and that kind of seeing the world as alive. I was talking to my partner Mary, and he was saying he can relate to it in terms of that, just being kind to everything. So I guess there's sort of like that can be brought in, and but yeah, it was just reminded me because of the, oh, if you buddy up, that's like perfect opportunity to like be nice. Then yeah, put an effort in to benefit somebody else as well.
Yeah. But that's a magic thought, isn't it? That's really brilliant. Just remember, everything is alive. I mean, we're back to the jungle again, I think. You know, that lovely sort of breathing. Everything has energy, has vitality, has potency, has beauty, has power and a strength. Yeah, you know, has vitality, has capacity to change and grow. Magic. Really magic.
I haven't got an idea quite yet of how to feed it in on the urban retreat idea of, you know, not biting off more than you can chew kind of thing, because either I can go around like with everything and be like, oh, pen, you're alive, but yeah, I'm not gonna remember to do that. So I guess it's do you have any ideas of how to, if you have quite a big thing that you want to do, but how to put it in like a small chunk so you will actually hopefully do it?
So let's think then, let's have a go at this, everybody. So you Esme want to remember everything is alive. So we could ask, well, yeah, Hannah?
I am saying this because I'm staring at 2. It's really hard to remember that things are alive in January because January is grey. But if you've got a plant, maybe put a plant near you, in front of you when you're working, so that every now and then you can stop and look and think that's alive.
Oh yeah, and that's lovely. Yeah, I could just get like a little cactus or something on my desk next to me. I'm usually surrounded by plants, but they, you know, they're further away, but maybe that would be more of a
yeah, bring them in. Alive, but you know, so alive, so what's alive? Alive, green things, green and growing things are alive. What else is alive? What else makes you feel alive or remember that you're alive?
I guess colours, like, yeah, nice colours, sort of strong colours. So.
Colours that speak to you, yeah, definitely.
Movement. Going for a walk in the day. I know they're things that are cliche things, yoga, that everybody talks about, but they really are really good for like connecting to your breath and remembering that we are breathing and alive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if me and other people might kind of actually forget that we're alive sometimes because we're just doing the next task that we have to do for, you know, whatever.
For me, that pings back to the sort of simplicity. Maybe there's nothing, if we can have a little tiny bit in the day of really trusting that it's okay to do nothing. other than be alive, other than be aware of just whatever happens to come, however subtle, however it does come. Just in a way, take the pressure off ourselves, the pressure to respond, the pressure to be thinking about stuff, the pressure to be getting it right, the pressure to be kind, whatever it is, you know, the pressure to be mindful, all that. Just tell you what, just relax. For these however long minutes, there's nothing to do. That can be the hardest thing in the world, can be the hardest thing. But also, if you can just do it, my goodness, the world opens up. It just opens up. And that then, it's got that, what is Dickens' phrase about re-enchanting the world, you know? Just kind of, it freshens you. You know, it lets things get their kind of shiny face on again. Just because you're increasing your sensitivity, aren't you? You know, you're but in a way that also has stamina, so it's got robustness, because that's what we want, isn't it? We want sensitivity with robustness, not just sensitivity that makes it harder to connect with the world, but the kind of sensitivity and strength that makes it easier to connect with the world, or that takes away the stuff that gets in the way.